Hey everyone, so I just got back from my deployment 3 weeks ago. I know that I haven't posted in a while, partially because I've been gone, and then since I've been back, I've been hanging out with family, friends, that sort of thing. So past 3 weeks hasn't been the most productive in terms of creating content and whatnot, but I just thought I'd make this video just to give a little update on everything, where I'm at, some of the things I got down to on the deployment, and just like a general update. So for the past sort of 3-4 months, I was basically in the Western Pacific, stopped by in Hawaii, then we went to Japan, Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei, then through Guam, and then Hawaii again, and then back home. And, that was probably one of the best 4 months of my life. It's a great privilege to be able to travel, and not only travel, but travel basically for free, because obviously, I'm doing my job. I'm getting, it's being on a boat is obviously it's pretty slow getting across the Pacific in a boat compared to like a 15-hour flight. Transiting the Pacific probably took, I don't know, like 2 to 3 weeks maybe. So you spend a lot of time at sea, obviously. You could be out for like 2 weeks at a time. Luckily, I was on a pretty small boat, so we had to stop relatively often. Some of the bigger boats, for example, in the Navy, can sustain themselves for much longer, so they stop very infrequently, and you could be at sea for like months at a time. So I was lucky enough not to have to deal with that. I was on a Coast Guard boat. I was just temporarily assigned to them. And like I said, it was a great experience. I think one of the first things that stood out to me right away was just being on the open water. Once you get far enough from the coast, obviously, in every direction, it's just ocean, right? And you might think that would be a scary feeling, but it really wasn't. It was very serene and peaceful. When you're on a boat, generally, since you have like weather reports and stuff like that. So you're avoiding storms, you're trying to avoid the worst weather. So generally speaking, aside from a few relatively rough conditions, it was pretty calm out there. And I would just spend hours going outside and just looking at the waves and just thinking about things, or reading a book, or having a smoke from a pipe. A lot of people smoked pipes, surprisingly, there, which is kind of cool. But you just spend hours looking at the waves and the oceans and just seeing just the waves go by, and occasionally you'd even see birds or flying fish or dolphins. Some people even saw orcas. It was really cool. I remember there was this one moment very early on in the deployment where we were out and the weather was kind of choppy, and we were pretty far from land at that point. But then I saw a bird, and that really surprised me, thinking how far that bird must have gone from land to come all the way out here into the ocean. It was just gracefully ducking down and diving and flying right over the waves, and that was a really cool moment for me, along with a lot of other cool moments. But yeah, so we stopped by in Hawaii. I'd been there before, so it was cool, but nothing really new. Japan was very interesting. We had only about 2 days there, so we didn't really have a lot of time to spend in Japan. However, I've always been fascinated with Japanese history. Obviously, I've talked about Musashi a lot on this channel, and recently Yukio Mishima, who I read a lot actually during the deployment. But yeah, I've always been fascinated with Japanese history and Japanese culture. So going there was very interesting. It's definitely they have sort of a weird dynamic there. So like there's a lot of things that in like Western culture you might sexualize, like certain what you might call like a sexy costume, and then in Japan it's really not sexualized. Like there was this thing called like a maid cafe, and there were like families there and stuff. But like from a Western perspective, you see these women dressed as maids, and you think, oh, this is kind of weird. This must be like a weird sexual theme thing. But then you see like kids and stuff laughing, and they're taking pictures of the parents. So it's interesting. They don't sexualize stuff as much in Japan. And the people there are relatively conservative in a lot of ways. But then at the same time, you also have like porno magazines, like outside 7-Elevens, like for kids, like kids could see those things. So it's a weird dynamic there. That I thought was interesting. We didn't really have enough time to sightsee or check out historical sites, so unfortunately, I originally had planned that I was going to visit Yukio Mishima's grave, and I was going to visit a Shinto shrine, but I didn't have time to do that. Unfortunately, we were really not there long enough, but we still had a good time. I got to have Japanese sushi, which is so much better than American sushi. Not only is it way cheaper, but it tastes way more fresh, and the way they prepare it and cut it, it's so much better, so fresh and amazing. Had some ramen, had some other food. So Japan was cool, really short though, and I wish I had more time there. And after that, we went to Korea. We went to a really, really small... That's right, I forgot to mention. Japan specifically, we went to the Tokyo area. So the base specifically there was Yokosuka Naval Base. And from there, it's like an hour train ride, an hour and a half to Tokyo. And then for Korea, we went to a really small set of cities in the very southern part of South Korea, obviously. Gwangyang and Yeosu. And there wasn't really much there. It was kind of an industrial port, so there wasn't much to do. We had some really good pork belly, like Korean barbecue, really good fried chicken. So the food was very good there, but there really wasn't a whole lot to do. Yeosu actually is famous for being the home or whatever of this very famous admiral. I forget his name, but we took pictures of his statue, and they had murals of him all over. But he's a very famous South Korean, Korean admiral, and I'm hitting myself for not remembering his name, but some Korean name, obviously. But from Korea, we were out at sea for a bit. Went to Malaysia. Malaysia was a lot cooler than I expected it to be. So it's interesting, in Malaysia, they are an Islamic country, and they have a lot of Islamic laws. However, those only apply to the Muslims in Malaysia, and the Malay people, by extension, are considered Muslims. So if you're not Muslim, you can drink, you can do whatever. So that was quite interesting, and it's so cheap there. The food was good. It was very cheap. The hotel, I got a 5-star hotel, and I got the most expensive room in the hotel for $200. And with that, you have access to like this VIP penthouse lounge on like the 21st floor, where they have like free food, free wine. So me and my buddies, we were just drinking wine and looking over the city, slowly go from day into night. And we were just drinking, looking at the city lights. It was beautiful. It was a really good experience. So Malaysia was actually probably one of my favorite places to visit. After that, we sailed around for a bit, then went down to Singapore. And Singapore is very interesting. It's probably the most bourgeois country you could ever go to. I don't have anything super special to say about Singapore. It's pretty much what I expected it to be. It was a very wealthy country. There's obviously a lot to do there. Food was decent. Not really any better than California Chinese food. But a lot of people spoke Mandarin there, and I speak Mandarin, pretty much everyone there spoke Mandarin and English, so I got to practice my Mandarin with them, so that was cool. But yeah, Singapore is nothing that I didn't expect, so I don't really have much to say about that. Went to Brunei after that. Now, that was interesting. Brunei has one of the strictest Islamic Sharia laws in the whole world, and there's no drinking there at all, so it was a good time to relax and have to, because when you're drinking, you kind of have to make the most of the time there, and go out with your buddies and stuff. But because there's no alcohol there, I pretty much just chilled the entire time, and that was nice to be able to relax a little bit. They had very good juice there. They had a night market where for 75 cents you could get a whole thing of noodles. It's interesting. And the thing about Brunei is they are a wealthy country, but the wealth isn't really spread out that much because the Sultan pretty much has a monopoly on everything there. So he subsidizes housing and all these different things in the country, but there's not a lot of opportunities for the actual people to make money. So for the most part, it's not booming like Singapore is. Their GDP per capita is pretty much equal to Singapore, but it's way different. Singapore, you have all these skyscrapers, very developed, while Brunei, it feels like a developing country, even though it's not, based on the architecture and sort of, lack of development you see there. But it was cool nonetheless. In terms of outdoorsy stuff, didn't get to do a whole lot of that. In Malaysia, we went up this little waterfall, and which was kind of like a rainforesty waterfall area. That was cool, but we didn't really do a lot of outdoor stuff. Went to the beach in Malaysia, in Hawaii obviously, and Brunei as well. Brunei's beaches were pretty nice, despite the fact that there wasn't really a lot going on in Brunei, but it was a cool place. interesting experience, especially here. I mean, you got this in Malaysia too, but hearing the prayer calls, the Islamic prayer calls throughout the day was very interesting. It kind of adds a very exotic backdrop to the place you're in. You just hear these prayer calls while you're chilling throughout the day. It's interesting, it's transplanting you to a whole nother world. But after Brunei, went down to Guam. Guam is like a poor version of Hawaii. That sounds bad, but that's the best way to describe it. And it was cool. I kind of like the more, underdeveloped vibes in Guam. Like, it wasn't super, or you don't have as many like huge hotels and stuff like that. So it was more like, it felt like more authentic, I guess. And Guam was really cool. It's actually a big hub for Korean tourists. So we had some pretty good Korean food there. Beaches were pretty nice. Yeah, we spent a good amount of time in Guam just because we originally were only supposed to stay there for like a day, but then some things happened and we had to stay a little longer. And then, of course, went back through Hawaii on the way back. But yeah, that's pretty much the port calls that we made. But in terms of actually being on the boat, it was a really cool experience. Got to learn a lot for my job, got to meet a lot of cool people, and I was super productive while I was on there. There was really not a lot to do on a boat, so you're kind of forced to read more, work out, write. I did a little bit of boxing with the people on the boat, and boxing on a boat's interesting because obviously it's not a very big boat. It's a Coast Guard cutter, like 420 feet about. So it's moving a lot. So you're on the deck, you're throwing your punches and stuff like that, and you're like bobbing from side to side because of the waves. So that was kind of cool. It's really difficult to work out like free. Like if you're trying to squat or bench, it was very difficult when the waves were rocky. And I remember one day when the waves were really bad, I was like squatting, but I would like every like few seconds I'd be moving front and back, and it forced me to really work on my stabilizer muscles. But that was cool. But like I said, got to read a lot while I was on the boat. I probably read like 25 books while I was on there, so I was pretty productive in that respect, and I got to write a lot. I wrote a book on the boat, wrote a lot of journals and stuff like that. So it was a good time to sort of just focus on things that you usually wouldn't focus when you have all these distractions and regular modern living. I couldn't really play video games, look at the internet or whatever. I had to just focus. So that was really cool. And yeah, it was just really peaceful being out on the boat, especially at night. A lot of times I would just go out on the flight deck at night, and if it was a clear night, you just see the stars. You could even see the Milky Way on a really clear night, and I just listen to music and walk around the flight deck and just look at the stars for like an hour, and it was really cool, really peaceful, and just watch the waves at night when you have like the moonlight glistening off of the waves, sort of glittering, right? It was really cool. And sometimes you'd see somebody else out at night and go have a smoke or talk, and it's just a good experience. A few other things I got to do a helicopter ride. Never rode a helicopter before. I've ridden the C-130, so that's the only other military aircraft I had ridden in before. So being on a helicopter was really cool. Got to go around the boat while it was going through the waves, and just got to watch the boat go along. We were doing circles around it, so that was really cool. Got to participate in a military ceremony. Got to do some line crossing ceremonies as well. Line crossing ceremonies are basically Haze Fest when you pass. So we did the Golden Dragon, so it's when you pass the international date line. And that's all I can say about that. But besides that, I'll probably talk more about certain things that I felt during that deployment. But it was a really cool experience to see so many new countries, have so many new experiences, meet so many new people. Being on a boat, like I said, it was very peaceful, and it could be very boring at times as well. But I think it sort of forces you to look inside yourself and find things to do, find ways to be productive. So, like I said, I'm sure I'll have more to talk about later that I'll think of, but that's pretty much gist of what I've been doing for the past 4 months. But now that I'm back, I'm hoping to make more videos, put out more podcasts. Got back into training recently, back in the gym. Going to be grinding with that, hopefully get a fight soon. And just get back on the grind, get back to reading more, working out more, just being productive. So that's kind of where I'm at. But it's good to be back in town. Good to be back to talk to all you guys. So yeah, good times. But anyway, that's about it for now. Just a little update. So yeah, as always, this is the Warrior Philosopher, building the foundations of the warrior philosophy. I'll see you next time.